Yesterday, President Trump made a surprise visit to the al-Assad air base in Iraq, where he visited the brave men and women serving abroad during Christmas. Meanwhile, back at home, the mainstream media trashed the president over his visit with our troops. Watch this.
In retrospect, and I give him credit for going to Iraq, but his actual performance there was shameful.
The president seems to have confused in some way this troop visit with a campaign rally.
This was really a political rally in front of troops in Iraq.
He treats the troops like props. It converts the troops into a partisan plaything.
It's the United States Congress and the people of the United States who are supporting our armed forces. They don't belong to him.
He's like the Grinch. Instead of, I'm being honest.
No, he stole Christmas.
It was so negative, and so you want positivity when it comes to Christmas. It is perplexing. Why would he visit the troops and do that?
The all too predictable attacks continued on CNN, where pundits actually criticized Trump for autographs. Take a look.
The pool reporters traveling said that the troops brought the hats with them, including one hat that said Trump 2020. We will have to see if that actually proves to be the case. The question is, if they brought them or if the president brought them, what commander allowed that to really happen? Because this is very much against military policy and regulation. Troops are not supposed to be involved in political activities. The U.S. military is not a political force. And there's no question the saying Trump 2020 and Make America Great Again, those are political slogans of a Trump campaign. They are not governmental sayings, to say the least.
Of course, you didn't hear those attacks under Obama. In 2008, when he was running for president, then-candidate Obama signed memorabilia and rallied the troops during an event at a military base in Kuwait. 4 years later, as president, running for re-election, Obama also signed autographs and took pictures at a base in Afghanistan. Of course he did. But now that it's Trump and he's the president, this is no longer allowed? Prime example of blatant media bias and hypocrisy. Joining us now is Fox News national security strategist Sebastian Gorka, national security analyst Morgan Ortagus, and RNC national spokesman Kayleigh McEnany. Thank you so much for being here. Kayleigh, I want to start with you. I mean, the hypocrisy and the double standard is so blatant here. But do the American people, do they see through this? What should they read from these media reports?
Oh, Jason, there's no doubt that the American people see through this. Here is the beauty of all of this. If there is any silver lining, it's this, that the media has eliminated the need of the president to call them out, to expose their bias. They have become so biased, so ridiculous, so outrageous, literally writing a headline while President Trump is in the air to visit the troops, that he is becoming the first president since 2002 to not visit the troops. That is fake news at its finest. They have become a parody of themselves. In doing so, they are exposing themselves. The American people are very much in tune with this, and they're doing themselves a disservice by going so negative because it's so blatant and so obvious to even the casual observer.
Sebastian, you're very close to the president. You served in the White House. Why do you think the president actually made this trip? It wasn't to sign autographs on Make America Great Again hats.
I know why he made it, Jason. I called the White House. I spoke with the White House on Christmas Eve. He did this because this was important to him, and it was important for Melania. I believe this is the first time a First Lady has visited an active war zone since 1969. And the fact that CNN and the rest of the fake news industrial complex is attacking those that wear the uniform of the Republic, that are serving in a war zone, it's an utter disgrace and an outrage. I worked for the Defense Department for more than 5 years. I was subject to the rules that require you to remain politically neutral as a civilian, and I've read the regulations that apply to those in uniform. You are not allowed to be involved in political campaigning, Jason. You know that as well as I do. The idea that you are asking your commander-in-chief for his autograph on a hat is not a political campaign action. All we need to know right now is, if you love this country like the president does, if you love this country like our servicemen and women, then CNN and the rest of that crew will hate you. It is really that simple.
Yeah, I thought that the reporting was absolutely, it really was shameful. But joining me here in New York in studio is Morgan Ortegas. Thank you so much for being here. Most people don't know this, but you served our country in both Saudi Arabia and Iraq.
Yes.
Thank you. That was years of service out of your life serving our country, and we thank you for that service. The president comes over. It's an unannounced trip. The people there, they don't know that the president's coming.
No.
They may have gotten a couple hours notice, if that. Sure. And when you serve overseas, right, you take what's precious and dear to you, what you care about, and your space is very limited. So the fact that these people had this on hand, knowing maybe with an hour's notice that the president's coming, says something about the intention of what these people believe. And he got a rousing applause when he walked into that room, didn't he?
And you know what's interesting? When Barack Obama, when George W. Bush, when other presidents, regardless of party, go to the region where the troops are and they're serving, they get rousing applause. And why is that? Because these members of the service serve at the pleasure of the commander-in-chief. They're away from their family. They're away from their friends on Christmas. And it's energizing to see your president there. They're excited to see him. You know, in a trip like that, when I was at the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh, for example, if we had a cabinet official or a high-level official coming in, that would have been planned weeks in advance. So to the criticism that this had something to do with Syria or the shutdown, it's almost impossible to plan something like that. It would have been done at the highest levels many weeks in advance. And so I think that this is one of those things. Often there's times where we look at something that the president did, and you see a lot of hullabaloo from the media. And sometimes I think it's being overblown. This is one of those cases where, as you know, I'm in the reserves, and I do not speak on behalf of the military. In fact, I serve with people who are Democrats, who are Republicans, who are down the middle, and we don't bring our partisan affiliation into the uniform. But when the president is there, regardless of party, you're happy to see your president. And to see these reporters, I got to say, how all of this happened is there is a reporter who zoomed in and took pictures of people's faces and their nameplates, which, by the way, is not the best OPSEC to begin with, and make sure that they were documented on Twitter with these MAGA hats and with the Trump banners for the explicit purpose of calling them out. And that reporter, I mean, I wouldn't let that person back on the White House press corps if it were me.
Yeah. Now, Kaylee, is there anything that the president can do that would be right? Because it doesn't seem to matter what this president does. They always seem to find fault in it, even visiting the troops at Christmas time.
That's exactly right. He does what is right and yet is still called out for it with blatant bias, with editorializing, with fake news stories. You know, I watched the entirety of his 25-minute speech. It was a very beautiful speech. For those who didn't see it aired live, go watch it. He literally sits there and thanks the troops, and he says, thank you for winning back 20,000 square miles of territory from ISIS. Thank you for liberating 3 million citizens. Their extraordinary accomplishments. Thank you for sacrificing and being away from your families. He said and did everything right, but that's just it. He can do everything right. The media, however, as found by a Harvard study, is 90% negative. They will remain negative. But at the end of the day, we have an election in 2020. The American people will reward him for doing what is right, despite the media onslaught, despite the liberal and the leftist onslaught that he endures every single day.
And I also thought that bringing the First Lady and having the First Lady make that trip and visiting with the troops was also a very nice touch.
Absolutely.
But Sebastian, you, again, with the troops, the message that it sends not only to the people there in Iraq that are serving, but overseas in Japan and all across the world, the message has got to be a resounding, Donald Trump has your back.
You took the words right out of my mouth. That's the next thing I was going to say. So I'd like to encourage all the viewers to go back to my Twitter feed, @SebGorka, look at Sarah Huckabee Sanders, look at the photographs from Iraq. Look at the faces of those servicemen and women. Look at the photographs from Ramstein, from Germany. They are so overjoyed that on Christmas Day, Donald Trump and Melania Trump don't spend their precious time together in the White House or in Mar-a-Lago. They fly to the Middle East. They fly to that base. They meet with these people. They shake their hands. They take their selfies. They know that one trip tells them everything they need to know about how much this commander-in-chief has their back. And most telling
real
of
quickly,
all,
Sebastian, I've got just a few seconds. I want to give Morgan the last word here. You know, the only thing that I've seen Barack Obama, the only thing he was willing to cut was the defense budget. But this president has plussed that up by tens of billions of dollars.
And what's also not being talked about is on that trip, the president was meeting with his senior military commanders on the ground. And the team has already started to show that they're thinking about perhaps a new strategy for Syria as it relates to keeping troops there. The president has indicated that he's going to keep troops in Iraq. For people like me who are defense hawks, this was a fantastic trip because the president got to see firsthand all of this stuff that is deliberated in the National Security Council. He got to see it firsthand. And I think it might have even, not necessarily changed his mind, but helped him sort of strengthen his strategy as it relates to Syria and Iraq. And that's incredibly important. No one's talking about that because they just want to criticize him for signing a hat.
I hope the president continues to do this. It means the world to these troops and their families back home. And to do it during Christmas time, and shame on the media for reporting it as they did. They did not give you the full picture of what was happening. And thank you, and God bless the troops who are serving and their families. We appreciate you joining us tonight.